Okay, so picture this. The foggy mountains of Tapala, Mexico. It looks like a peaceful little tourist town, right? Stone streets, quiet shops, but hidden deep in the jungle just outside, a secret is being kept. A really big one. This is the hiding place of the world's most wanted drug lord, a man so elusive they called him the Ghost.
$15 million. That's how much the US government was willing to pay for him. His name was Mencho. This guy was such a ghost, the only pictures the world had of him were decades old. For years and years, he was completely untouchable.
But then, on February 22nd, 2026, all of that waiting, all that hunting, it all came to a very sudden and very violent end.
So how did they finally find him? You know, you'd think it was some big shot informant flipping on him. But nope, it was way simpler than that. It was a digital trail. Mexican intelligence just followed the digital breadcrumbs from an associate of Mencho's girlfriend, and it led them right to this hidden compound. Just like that, the ghost location was locked.
Okay, so before the sun even comes up, this massive military force is closing in. And here's the really smart part of their strategy. They wanted total surprise. So, they used almost all ground troops. No noisy helicopters tipping them off. They were going in silent, patient, and deadly. As the soldiers move in, the whole place just explodes in gunfight. The fight is on. In that first chaotic shootout, 4 of the cartel's gunmen are killed. But Mencho, well, true to his name, he vanishes, slips right through their fingers with his bodyguards, and disappears into the thick jungle. The chase was on. After another insane firefight, they finally cornered him. The soldiers captured a badly injured Mencho and got him onto a helicopter, but he died on the way to Mexico City. The ghost was finally caught. Here's the thing though, his death wasn't the end of the story, not even close. It was just the beginning of the chaos. To really get your head around how one man's death could literally set a whole country on fire, we've got to go back. We need to ask, who exactly was Nemesio Oseguera Cervantes? Who was the man behind the myth of Mencho? Yeah, his story definitely doesn't start in some fancy mansion. It starts in the dirt-poor fields of rural Mexico. It's a wild journey that takes him from being a poor farmer's son to a petty criminal in the US, and then all the way back. I mean, just look at this path. He's born into serious poverty in a place known for 2 things, avocados and weed. He drops out of school in the 5th grade to work. By the time he's 14, he's guarding marijuana fields. He tries to chase the American dream in California, but ends up selling heroin to undercover cops. So what happens? He does his time, and at 30 years old, he gets deported right back to Mexico, way more hardened and ready for whatever came next. So he's back in Mexico, but he doesn't just fall back in with the usual crowd. No, he does something much, much smarter and way more sinister. He decides he's going to learn the entire system from the inside out, so that one day he could tear it all down. This is practically a masterclass in a criminal hostile takeover. First, the guy becomes a cop. He learns exactly who's corrupt and who can be bought. Then, he marries into a big cartel family to get his foot in the door. When the old bosses get killed or arrested, he sees his chance. But when they tell him he can't be the top dog, he doesn't just walk away. He splinters off and creates his own, even more brutal group, the Jalisco New Generation Cartel, or CJNG. You know, one investigator said that nobody had challenged the state like this since Pablo Escobar. But Mencho took it to a whole other level. See, Escobar waged war against the state. Mencho's group waged war like a state. We're talking rocket launchers taking down military helicopters. This wasn't just a drug cartel anymore. This was a straight-up paramilitary force. So the big question is, how does a cartel get powerful enough to shoot down a military helicopter? The answer isn't just about guns. It's about chemistry and a brilliant, terrifyingly effective business model that cashed in on a global crisis. So yeah, meth was making them rich, but the real, absolute game changer was fentanyl. This stuff is a synthetic opioid so incredibly powerful that a dose the size of a few grains of sand can kill you. It created a fire hose of cash unlike anything the criminal world had ever seen. All right, get ready for this, because the economics are just nuts. It costs them about 10 cents to make one fentanyl pill. That same pill sells on the street in the US for 10, 20, even 30 bucks. Do the math. A $500 investment in the raw chemicals could turn into as much as $20 million. The profits are just staggering. And of course, with those insane profits comes an absolutely devastating human cost. In 2023 alone, almost 74,000 people in the United States died from synthetic opioid overdoses, and a whopping 70% of those deaths were from fentanyl, the very drug that built El Mencho's entire empire. But this is where the story gets even more complicated. A lot of sources point to a whole chain of US policies that, whether they meant to or not, kind of helped create this monster they were now trying to fight. You've got CIA ops in the 80s using cartel land for training, the NAFTA trade deal, which basically created a drug superhighway, and a constant, massive flow of American guns, including a botched operation where US agencies just lost over 2,000 of them in Mexico. Okay, so let's jump back to the present. El Mencho, the ghost, is dead. His family's in jail. You'd think that would be the end, right? A major victory? But instead of peace, Mexico burned. And this wasn't random anger. This was a message, and it was terrifyingly coordinated. El Mencho's second-in-command put a bounty on every single soldier. The cartel launched attacks in 20 different states at the same time. They burned cars, set up roadblocks, and basically shut down Guadalajara, the second biggest city in the country. This was narco-terrorism, and it was all to prove one thing: killing the boss doesn't kill the business. And that brings us to the biggest, toughest question of them all, the one that's still hanging in the air long after all the smoke is cleared. The hard truth is history shows us this pattern over and over again. It's like that monster, the Hydra. You cut off one kingpin's head and two more pop up to take his place. They fight over the same territory, the same drug routes, the same money. The names on top might change, but that brutal cycle just keeps on spinning. And at the end of the day, this isn't just a Mexico problem, it's a shared crisis. It's fueled by a massive demand for drugs in America, a river of American guns flowing south, and deep, deep poverty that creates an endless supply of new recruits. As long as